Greetings, traveler. Recently, I did a video about the Senmongako system in Japan, which is basically a vocational school system for learning various fields in game development. I will link the video down below for your reference, but as a question to that video, a traveler called the OG Queen 001 asked, I would love to join the industry, but I don't feel confident enough to join the workforce just yet, especially as it would be in a different country, which is why I'm aiming for a Senmongako. So the assumption here is that rather than jumping in directly and working as a game designer, as she said she's interested in becoming, she would like to first study in a school and then join the workforce. So that really resonates with me because those are exactly the thoughts I was having when I was in a similar situation. And back then, that is the choice I took as well. Instead of directly joining the a working position in the industry, I decided to go to a school to learn game design or game development first. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. So today, what I want to do is share my experience, what I saw going through that system, and what I found out in the journey, and why I think this was a wrong move for me to make, and what I would recommend, what I would do rather today if I had to make these choices all over again. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 13 years now, and I wanted to work in the Japanese games industry because I felt that I had seen the Western side of gaming, so European, American kind of gaming culture. It was something I had experienced extensively when I was younger, and I felt I understood enough about the way ideas are made, the way game design is put together for these games. I had been a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons for decades, and I felt that I was exposed enough to that side of gaming. However, when it came to the Japanese gaming culture, so games that were developed in Japan and sold worldwide, even though I enjoyed many of them, I couldn't really say I understood why they were interesting to me, how they were made, what made them look so cool, and so on. So I decided I wanted to work in Japan to get exposed to that culture, understand the way of thinking of people here, and hopefully learn enough to enhance my own skills in the future so I can combine all the deep and interesting Western side of gaming with the innovative and seemingly strange at times side of Japanese gaming, which I really, really like as well. So what I did was, after learning Japanese for about a year, I felt that I didn't know enough about the Japanese games industry to simply jump in and look for a position. My teachers at my Japanese language school were, of course, happy to help me prepare for a job interview in Japanese. So they would ask me all the right questions, they would role play with me, make sure they correct my mistakes, and so on. But even so, I felt that the next logical step for me would be to go to a school to learn more about game development and how the working environment is in Japan. Now, that is the choice I did make back in the day. And strangely, because I didn't want to be just studying, because I thought it would be, I would want to do something more with my time than just study, I decided to look for a job in the games industry. So that was my desire, but still I had no concrete way of pursuing that. So at the time, the girl I was dating was actually a programmer in Japan, not in the games industry, but in a different field. And when I told her what my general plan is and what I wanted to do in the future, she said, and this was basically right before the time I finished my Japanese school and started attending the Senmongako here in Japan. She said, "Well, why don't you check out some jobs in the games industry?" And I said, well, I don't have any work experience. Why would they be interested in me? She said, don't worry about that. There's plenty of positions here. There is lots of companies who are looking for junior staff. There's a system in Japan specifically to encourage Japanese companies by the government to recruit fresh graduates. So even though that I didn't exactly fit the profile, that still meant that there's a lot of Japanese companies out there who would be actively interested in people with no experience because of the government programs and so on. So with her encouragement and with some recommendations from her for events to attend. So by that I mean there's several events here in Japan that are basically kind of like recruiting events. Imagine a huge hall filled with booths by various gaming companies or software companies in general. And all they're there for is to meet new people, talk about their company, talk about their projects. And if it seems like it's a good match, then the prospects would be invited for an interview at the company at a later time. But it's a very time-efficient event, both for companies because they can meet lots of people in 1 or 2 days, and the same for people looking for work. They can meet with 10, 20, maybe more companies, all in the span of, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, let's say, attending the event. And there's also good matching systems and skill matching and position matching in the online systems of those events if you pre-register and so on. So it's fairly organized. That was the case for it more than 10 years ago. So today it's even more advanced. So anyway, long story short, going to that event, I spoke to a few game companies. I got invitations to interviews by 3 of them. 2 of them turned into job offers, and I took the one I was most interested in. So essentially, even though I had decided I would attend this school, at the same time, it was basically effortless on my side to find a job. So all the skills I needed was working enough knowledge of the Japanese language. And the reason why I say it was effortless is because I wasn't really asked to display any sort of skill. I was just interested in starting out in the games industry. So I had in mind something like an engineer position or maybe something closer to my background, since my background was in computer science. But it turned out to be a game tester position that I was starting at as part-time. So at the same time as I actually started my school, I also started my part-time job as a game tester in a Japanese game company. And that is where I realized the mistake I made. Because essentially, in the first few months of working in that game position, my bosses were happy enough with my work that they wanted to invite me to work full-time there. And really, that's not a hard achievement. I didn't do anything amazing. It's just that I was really interested in the subject, and I was really happy to test games and report not just bugs, but also my ideas for improvement for these games. Like, for example, in this menu, it takes 4 steps to go to the main gameplay. What if we did it 3 steps or 2 steps? Very, very, very simple things like that. Nothing super complicated, nothing super technical, just stuff you normally think of as a player. So even though I got the invitation to join full-time, of course I couldn't because my visa was tied to my school at the time. And due to the Japanese visa system, you have to complete your school program for the visa to continue to apply and to have no problems reapplying for visa in the future, and also for schools to keep being able to provide visas to students. The students need to complete the curriculum. If students drop out of the system, then basically that shows to the government that that school is doing something dodgy and so on. They're kind of inviting students just for the visa, and then the students are dropping the school and they're doing something else in Japan, which the government doesn't like. So that essentially meant that I was locked in for the full, I think it was 3 years of the school curriculum. And I thought, well, since it's going to be 3 years, I might as well learn the most I can, since I can only work part-time for these 3 years, and let's try to combine the best of both worlds. And in going in those 3 years, I could see side by side the difference of working in a game company, even at this tester role initially, and studying under teachers who are themselves game industry veterans. So working at that company, even as a game tester, I got a lot of exposure to real, actual day-to-day game development, the pace of the project, the kind of tasks that are necessary, the composition of the teams, the roles and responsibilities of all the members, deadlines, quality checks, and so on. Also, even though I wasn't a game designer myself, I got a lot of exposure and a lot of contact to the game designers of the team. So, of course, as a tester, I could talk to them, I could ask them questions, I could see all the game design documents. Basically, I had full access to all of the material and all of the team members of the project, which is a vastly superior experience to what I got at my school. And by the way, I'm talking about my school in particular, but because of exposure I got to other schools and the connections I made to students of other similar game development schools during my time, I had countless conversations with other students about how their schools are doing things and if their programs are any different. And let me just say, I was pretty exhaustive in my questioning, and I asked so many people what their schools were like and what the teachers were like, and the answer was consistently the same. People who teach in senmongakos, in vocational schools in Japan, are industry professionals. They have a very good skill in something, or at least a skill is in something, and that is the skill they're supposed to be teaching. So, for example, a teacher in game design is a game designer himself in the industry, sometimes a very senior one. But there is a vast difference between knowing how to do a skill yourself well and being able to teach it much more to a class, with everybody having different backgrounds and everybody learning at different speeds. So 99.9% of the stuff I was exposed to in the school were not really answering the burning question I had before joining the school. And that is, how do you make a good video game? So I had this question because, if you join a school to learn how to make coffee, the expectation is that by the end of it, you will know how to make a decent cup of coffee. If you join a vocational school for, designing chairs or making chairs, you can build a pretty decent chair by the end of it. And this is the expectation for technical schools, right? For vocational schools, because they're supposed to be the hands-on ones, the real deal, this is what you actually get to do kind of schools. It's not a university, it's not some abstract academic program where you learn principles and abstract math and so on. Vocational schools are supposed to be the hands-on, let's make something real type of schools. So I didn't get that experience. Nobody else I spoke to got that experience. Instead, the experience we got at school was some stories about the games industry and some little questions and projects and exercises, but the teachers never push the students on anything, because particularly in that environment, it's full of young Japanese adults who are basically they have just left school and they're wondering what to do next with their lives. So it's not exactly a super high pressure environment, and if somebody doesn't perform, schools are very unlikely to kick them out of the project or anything similar. If anything, schools want everybody to graduate and everybody to find a very basic job at a company of their choice. So that was my experience at the school. And at the same time, at my work, things were completely different, right? I could ask also real people real questions about the actual real world project we were working on. And the project was already released, the one I joined, and the company had various projects. So the one I joined was one already in service. So I could see the live operation side of the project as well. Another benefit of seeing that real work environment was that because I could ask other engineers and other game designers and so on what their tasks are, what their job is like, I could have time to show them what I could do with my skills. So in the beginning, I made a very, very simple testing program to basically improve the way we were doing the game testing at the company. And even though the program was extremely simple, it still used some programming skill, which the other members of the testing team did not have. They were doing all the tests manually. So when I showed that, then I let other members of the team use my tool as well. That definitely caught the attention of the engineers in the team, who then invited me to become an engineer rather than a tester. And using exactly the same method later on, I made the jump from an engineer to a game designer. Again, by having conversations with the right people in the company, which are very available to you if you are working in the company, and getting just the right opportunity to show off what you can do and your devotion and so on. So I say this because even inside the games industry, you'd be surprised how many people are just tired from everyday work, from life, from society. And even though they have the luck and honor, in my opinion, to be working in the games industry, um, once the time comes to actually do their work, not many of them are super enthusiastic. They're happy to be there, but not super enthusiastic about their work. So any sort of passion that you can show during your work, any additional task you complete for the team, any time you take to make suggestions beyond your normal tasks for improving the game, improving the workflow of the company or the team or anything, those things are definitely getting noticed. And it had a profound effect on my career and my experience. So yes, long story short, I did manage to make the jump from engineer to game designer, but I could have just as easily made the jump from game tester to game designer immediately, just by talking to the right people at the right time, I suppose. So that's how I experienced the games industry and vocational schools in the beginning. And for the remainder of my time, I switched to game designer, I think, after the first year of working at the company or something, which is not to say that 1 year is the requirement for anything like that. You could have done it immediately. It's just how it worked out for me. So for the remainder of the vocational school, I really, really didn't learn anything. I got to hear a lot of cool stories from the teachers, but cool stories don't improve your game design skill. They do not function in that way. They're just stuff that's good to know in general. They do not answer specific questions like, how many hit points should this enemy have? And how do I write a game design document so it's easy to communicate to others? Or um, how should I design a world to best show off the character of my game? All these questions remained unanswered. And when I asked teachers specifically for these questions, I got very vague, very long-winded answers because, as I mentioned, it's a different thing to have a high skill in one domain and being able to teach that skill to another person. So that was my experience. And now that I have that, what I hope to do for you, traveler, out there listening to this, is, if possible, transfer my experience and my knowledge to you. So if you have to make the same decision, hopefully you can make it in a more informed way. So if I had to go back and do it all again, if I were at the point in my life where I was finishing up my Japanese school, I had my Japanese diploma and I was looking forward to see what to do in the future with the specific purpose of becoming a game designer, working as a game designer as quickly as possible, then this is what I would do. I would attend as many of these events as possible where companies are actively looking for people. These are called Tenshoku events or Tenshoku fairs, which means changing job fairs or looking for your next job kind of fair. And the assumption there is that people who are going there already have a job in the games industry or some sort of a software company, and they're looking to go to another company. And someone might think, well, this is not really for people who don't have a job at the moment. This is what I also thought, and I was extremely lucky to have my girlfriend at the time tell me that, look, that's not really the case. Companies who go to these fairs are just looking for people, and often looking for people at a very junior level. So just by being there and talking to them, perhaps not all of them are interested, but some of them are interested, as it evidently happened with my case. So don't be intimidated by that, because that's not a realistic fear. It's not a real thing. Companies are simply looking for people, and the changing job fairs, the Tenshoku fair, is just an excuse for them to do so. But those are not the only venue, right? Game shows like the Tokyo Game Show or Bit Summit and so on are excellent places as well. Lots of game companies obviously have booths over there. You can talk to them, you can ask them what their company is doing, what their company is looking for. And the reason why I would recommend looking for a game tester position in the beginning, even if it's a part-time one, is because those are typically the ones with the least requirements. You don't need to be a double PhD in anything to be able to test a game. What you do need to have is, of course, your sense as a player and a good way of communicating with others, organizing your work, listing out all the issues you find and communicating them easily. Those are the essential skills there. And there's another reason why I would do that instead of attending a school. If you attend a school, well, there's the being locked up in the visa system, which is one thing, but the other is you have to pay to attend the school, and you get a very low quality education. While if you're working as a part-time, even as part-time, even as a game tester in a company, you are getting paid to get high quality, real world, actual game project education. And the biggest part of education, at least in the beginning for any skill, is something that people don't know and people don't realize, and they definitely don't talk about. It's simply about the exposure. It's simply about being in the environment that you will one day be required to perform a skill. So when somebody is learning how to snowboard, for example, the first minutes and hours of learning how to snowboard, yes, you're trying to practice something specific, like standing up or strapping on your snowboard or making a simple turn and so on. But really, the most value comes in the form of the simple exposure. Just being in that environment, teaching your muscles all the movements they'll have to do in that environment, building the muscle memory, getting used to the cold and the wind and the feeling of the clothes on you and so on. And eventually, once that exposure stage, makes you get used to that environment, then you can start practicing the specific skills like standing up and making turns and so on. So, because this is generally how skills work, being in an actual work environment and having real work tasks to do is way more beneficial than attending any school or any program. And for game testing, the tasks are not exactly super complicated. Somebody will create a specific build for you of the game that they have something they want you to test, and you just have to play the game. So nothing new there. No innovation, no new ground, nothing at all. You just get a build. They say something like, we developed a new weapon. Please make sure it functions with no problems. These are the features it's supposed to have. Or we made a new event for our game. Please go through the event and make sure that you can complete the event, which is, again, something you would be doing as a simple player in your life anyway. You've probably done this a million times already as a player. So very easy task-wise, extremely simple, not challenging whatsoever to complete these day-to-day tasks. Once you complete your tests, you just have to report them to your manager or to your team members, and then you can do all the other stuff that I mentioned. So get to meet the team, get to see the game design documents that other team members produce, ask questions about them, go to lunch with people, ask why things are the way they are, experience the team structure, know who is the responsible for the creative part of the game, how does that get communicated to the team, how does that get implemented, how does that get tested, how does it go out to the players. You get to experience this real world loop from the safest environment possible. You're just doing your tasks as a game tester. So very, very easy, something you already know how to do. And of course, as I mentioned, unlike game school where you don't get all of that, you just get some vague exercises that are not very helpful. And you have to pay for that. In the game tester position, they are paying you to learn, which is win all around. And just like you would have to go around to different schools first to talk to the teachers and ask about the program and convince them that you're good enough to be attending that school, which I think is a ridiculous process. You can spend the same time and use less effort to go around various game companies in those events or shows or through connections or whatever, and ask them what their projects are, and if they're looking for game testers. In fact, you can see that in most game company recruitment websites. So that's it. It's the same process, and it's easier to actually find a tester job than actually go through the onboarding process to enter a school. So if I was back then and I would have to make the same decision, I mean, I cannot stress it enough. I would go for even the simplest game tester position possible. If you can find a game designer position, a junior one, then of course that's great too. But even game tester is a great place to start. In fact, I would go as far to say that even an internship in a place like that would be great. So with the assumption that the internship is unpaid, because you would be paying for a vocational school anyway, right? So not having to pay is already an upgrade. And the way most gaming internships work, especially in the games industry, is that if you do a good job, yeah, they want you back to do more. Because again, most people, in my experience, they perform their job, but like at the bare minimum requirement. They're not overachievers. They're not super passionate. They're not going to go the extra mile, even in the games industry. So it's very, very easy to stand out by just being your normal passionate self about games and just thinking every day, how can I make this game better? So that's what I would do. I hope this sheds some light in this world and in the choice between A or B. I know it's intimidating in the beginning, and trust me, as I mentioned, I was there. I did go through that intimidation step. I did have to make a choice, and I do think it was a wrong choice at the time. So if I would have to go back and do it all again, this is what I would do. Anyway, I know this process is very complicated. At least it looks complicated, and it looks very dark looking at it from the outside. There's all these unknowns. I had the luck of having very helpful teachers back at the language school. Very helpful people that I met here in Japan, like my girlfriend at the time, or friends I met through the language school and through my network here. I was lucky later on because I spoke to many, many very, very nice people in the games industry who could ask me all these questions. And I'm sure that anybody who would approach another human being with genuine interest and genuine passion for games would get the same or better performance than what I got. And even if you don't have any person to do all these things for you at the moment, then at least I hope with my experience I can be a small help in that direction. So if you have any specific questions, please let me know. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope this helps the OG Queen 001 or any other traveler who is looking in this direction out there. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, have fun.